have your experiences been with scaling innovation that originate in the field? And Bernard, I'm going to layer on top of this, if you don't mind. I know you can manage this. Alex has posted a question that's fairly popular on Slido that I think is related. It would be useful to hear your key lessons to judge whether to scale. For example, in our experience, is that community-based social incubations may not be scalable and means to adapt to local conditions to enabling scale. So Bernard, can you talk a little bit about how do you decide whether to scale, whether not to scale? And could you maybe talk about that within the context of, you know, some of what you talked about ideas originating from the field and, you know, how that has an impact on your overall strategy and approach to scaling at WFP? Have I asked you a complicated enough question, Bernard?
No, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think in terms of like innovations coming from the field to us, I think this has been one of the I think positioning success factors of calling our unit an accelerator, because we actually make the burden for people to reach out super low. So everybody can apply. You don't have to talk to your supervisor in WFP. External NGOs, startups, companies can apply. So like everybody essentially on our website can do that. And some of the most successful things actually have started in our field operations or with staff from our field operations. Now, I think what we always look into already when we select teams for the earlier stage of support is we already have a question of what's the innovation potential. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, let's say you can test an innovation in a country operation that's maybe a little bit smaller. So if it's tested in El Salvador rather than in South Sudan, that's also fine, as long as you can learn and see that there is potential for further countries. So I think our appetite is always that it can be something in theory that can scale. Obviously, not everything is scaling. So that's, I think, in terms of things that are coming from the field, that's definitely an area. I do want to add on to this that typically from our support, like when we're doing our boot camps, which is a 5-day training program, and then also in the support from our accelerator, typically it's different challenges. So while, for instance, a lot of colleagues who have been like working in the field for maybe, let's say, 5 to 10 years, they may need help in, you know, integrating the latest technology or how to build a sustainable business model. Similarly, when you have, for instance, like a startup or somebody who hasn't been as much exposed to field realities, they need more help in understanding how our life realities in developing countries for the people we serve are. So I think that's some of the differences that you actually need to capture. Now to your second question, when to scale, our threshold for scaling is, so we would want to see the potential to positively impact the lives of 100,000 people at least, and to be relevant in more than one country. So it's that we haven't had a purely single trigger point for most of these projects that are now scaling. We do have a stakeholder group, an advisory group for innovation in the World Food Programme that we actually expose this innovation to and like get different views from like our policy team, program teams, IT, from country offices and our region bureaus, like different functions in WFP. And we actually ask them for advice and consideration of, is this something that's relevant? And would you think this will actually move the needle in the next step? Because I do think also, even when you're having, let's say, a lot of innovations, specifically when it comes to scaling, if you need, let's say, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, whatever the number is, you need to prioritize. And so I think this prioritization is something that's important. And a lot of times we've actually seen that exposing these innovations, for instance, to our country directors is a good sanity check. So for instance, again, taking, let's say, building blocks, the blockchain example. So what we've tried to do is when we have, for instance, executive board meetings or other gatherings with country directors, having a session where we give them an update on the things that we find most exciting, and then just seeing from their feedback, we actually see, oh, this is something that I really see could help us in the context of the country that we're currently active in. And I think this is an element where you could say we are outsourcing it, but at the same time, it's the same logic of actually asking, now in this case, the country director is a proxy for actual demand.
Great, thank you, Bernard.